Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Saturday, it's January 18th. Today is day 470. Everyone's wondering what's happening in terms of the ceasefire negotiations. It looks like they are tenuously moving forward. I'll give updates about that. The most recent numbers in terms of death tolls in Gaza are at least 46,899 people killed since October 7th of 2023. In the past 24 hours, 23 Palestinians have been killed and at least 83 wounded. The Biden administration is ending its tenure and as such has summarized what's happened in the past week in a State Department announcement that was sent out today. They said that after months of US-led diplomacy, Israel and Hamas agreed on January 15th to a ceasefire and hostage deal, halting the fighting in Gaza, delivering humanitarian aid, and reuniting hostages with their families after 15 months of captivity. Even as we welcome this news, we remember all of the families whose loved ones were killed during the Hamas October 7th attacks and the many innocent people killed in the war that followed. President Biden said in a statement, he did not even name the Palestinian people in Gaza by name. It's long past time for the fighting to end and the work of building peace and security to begin, he said. The agreement came a day after the Secretary of State Antony Blinken's remarks at the Atlantic Council, where he outlined a post-conflict plan to allow Israel, quote, to withdraw from Gaza, to prevent Hamas from filling back in, and to provide for governance, security, and reconstruction, end quote. So what's the status of the ceasefire on this 470th day? The Israeli Defense Forces have established temporarily closed military zones. They're preparing for the ceasefire deal to be implemented tomorrow on Sunday. In Israel, hundreds are protesting the ceasefire negotiations and the agreement. They blocked entrances to Jerusalem, opposing the negotiations. Some oppose them because all of the hostages have not been released. Others oppose them for different reasons. The ceasefire between Hamas and Israel is said to go into effect at 8:30 tomorrow morning, Jerusalem time. The mediators in Qatar announced that today. Families of hostages held in Gaza have braced for news about their loved ones. Palestinians are preparing to receive freed detainees. Humanitarian groups are standing by, ready to set up a surge of aid. In a national address 12 hours before the ceasefire is set to start, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said the country is treating the ceasefire as if it's temporary. They are retaining the right to continue fighting if necessary. He claimed he has the support of US President-elect Donald Trump, telling NBC News that President Trump told Prime Minister Netanyahu, keep doing what you have to do. Netanyahu said Hamas has not yet submitted the list of hostages that are to be released tomorrow, Sunday, warning that Israel will not proceed with the ceasefire agreement unless those names are received, tomorrow on Sunday. A few days prior to the inauguration, President-elect Trump affirmed Netanyahu's comments from his speech. He was telling NBC that his administration will make sure the ceasefire deal proceeds and that it will be done, quote, by a good government, referring to the Israeli government. Trump said the U.S. has to be respected again, and it has to get respect fast. Trump also said, but respect is the primary word I use. If they respect us, it, meaning the ceasefire, will hold. If they do not respect us, all hell will break out. In other news, Saudi Al Hadath channel reported today that Hamas will provide within hours a list of Israeli hostages set to be released tomorrow. Al Arabiya reported earlier that Hamas told mediators it will deliver the hostages' names after they are moved to safe locations. All of this, I'm sure by the time you hear this, will have shifted a bit and hopefully progressed in positive directions. Israeli officials believe delays in releasing the list of hostages do not signal a collapse of the ceasefire agreement. They anticipate the deal will proceed. Tomorrow, Sunday, it is expected 3 Israeli women hostages are set to return from Gaza back to Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu stated that Israel will increase forces along the Philadelphia corridor. That's on the south border of Gaza. This is under the agreement. In phase 2, it's believed that the Philadelphia corridor ultimately will return to Egyptian control. Netanyahu emphasized maintaining control of the corridor to prevent weapons smuggling and ensure no hostages are moved out of Gaza, is a part of the current agreement. Israeli families of individuals killed in the terrorist attack on October 7th appealed to Israel's top court ahead of the expected release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners, because many of those who are set to be released were involved in previous attacks against Israeli citizens. In Israel, the national security minister, far right-wing, the security minister in Israel, Itamar Ben-Gvir, announced plans to resign over the hostage deal with Hamas. He said he might rejoin the coalition if fighting resumes. This leaves the government with 62 members. The IDF boasted West Bank forces in the occupied territories. This is preparing for the release of Gaza hostages. Halevi, the chief of the IDF, ordered reinforcements into the occupied territories. This is amid the implementation and expectation of the ceasefire agreement going into effect. And an Israeli was severely wounded in a stabbing attack in Tel Aviv today. This was by a West Bank Palestinian in Israel without a permit. The attacker was shot dead. The Palestinian Authority reached an agreement with armed militants in the West Bank city of Jenin just yesterday. This ends hostilities between militants in Jenin and the Palestinian Authority. According to civilian teams, they will enter the camp to restore water and electricity and infrastructure. Security teams will neutralize explosives that still are in the area. The Palestinian Authority agreed that wanted individuals among the militants will be allowed to surrender themselves, and they are guaranteed a fair trial. That's a quote. Lebanon's new president, Joseph Aoun, stressed to the UN Secretary General Guterres today the urgency of Israel's withdrawal from South Lebanon under the current truce deal that ended the Israel-Hezbollah war in November, and the Houthis in Yemen have plans to cease their attacks upon Israel once the ceasefire in Gaza goes into effect, a spokesperson said today. There are many, many, many stories from families in Gaza and families of hostages, families from the occupied West Bank, about how they feel about the ceasefire going into effect. 470 plus days, 471 days tomorrow when hostages are set to be returned, those being released from Israeli prisons, some after decades of being away from parents, children, siblings, their own children, waiting to be welcomed home with open arms. People in Gaza are asking, what do we have left? For Palestinians reeling from the devastating toll of 15 months of war between Hamas and Israel, those in the Gaza Strip are set to return to their homes, many, if not most, reduced to ruins. They hope to sleep a night without fear, to begin to grieve. Mohammed Abu Aklas is a 32-year-old marketing manager who lives in a badly damaged house in the Gazan city of Nusrat. He expressed mixed feelings about watching people celebrate the news of an agreement. Their happiness breaks my heart, because what do we have left, he said. Abu Aklas said more than 90% of those who survived have been displaced from their homes, many multiple times. Abu Aklas is wearing the same pair of pants, now tattered, that he had on when the war began more than a year ago. During that time, he's been displaced 3 times. He was injured alongside of his mother in an airstrike. On Tuesday, before the ceasefire was announced, another missile hit a neighboring house and sprayed body parts into their building. He tells a leg and a part of a face. He said, until the very last moments, there is still death. Starting today is the week of prayer for Christian unity. The author and ethicist, Dr. Andrew DeCourt, is leading alongside of us at Churches for Middle East Peace in a series of prayers and reflections on the Beatitudes from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, today through January 25th. We'd invite you to join us at noon Eastern Standard Time every day. We're praying alongside many renowned guests, several from the Middle East. Join us in these times of prayer. Today, Sister Susanna from Maryknoll led us. Tomorrow, Shireen Awad Halal from Bethlehem Bible College. Reverend Dr. Munther Itzhak will be with us from Christ at the Checkpoint. many, many others throughout the next several days, including Reverend Molo, who is the General Secretary of the South African Council of Churches, and a reminder tonight and tomorrow and Monday. Light a candle for peace, that the ceasefire would be implemented and that it would last, becoming a permanent ceasefire. Post a video of your lighting on social media tonight through Monday. Prayers for the resurrection of Gaza and for all in the Middle East, that peace would be permanent, that God would go before us. In the name of Christ, amen.